Welcome to the EFF NPA special. I'm Jamie Mighti, and I've been invited to have a conversation on international relations and the EFF NPA policy document on international relations. And I'm joined in studio by Commissar Godrich Gardee, and he, as you know, is the head of the International Relations Department. Commissar, welcome.
Thank you very much, my brother. Good to have you and to have us here with you today.
It's a pleasure. So let me start off by asking, why did the EFF develop this document holistically, but specifically why also add this element on international relations?
Fair enough. We always say we're a government in waiting. If you're a government in waiting, all the stakeholders would like to know what would be like to be in a government of EFF in terms of international cooperation and international relations. What will be our posture to imperialism of the West? What will be our posture towards China, Russia? What will be our standing towards the conflict in Ukraine, Russia? What is our understanding of the conflict in Palestine? And what is our view about the rest of Africa and the tribalistic village republics that are intending to emerge? What is our view of trade with the rest of the world and in particular Africa? Therefore, you need that a policy document, what in other former liberation movement they will call it ready to govern. So we are ready to govern, and if we are ready to govern, what is it that is our plans in the EFF?
So this document has been drafted, and I'm assuming it will then be debated at conference. And does that then mean that it will have modifications or adjustments? And when will the public be able to see that information if there are adjustments?
The document is in the public currently. It has to go through three phases. The first phase is the drafting. The second phase is the publishing, and then the third phase is the discussion in the National Assembly. In the National Assembly, delegates will have the final say as to which extent is are the provisions in the document consistent with the founding principles of the organization, with the provisions of the constitution of the organization, and to which extent it is consistent with what made them to join the economic freedom fighters. And to the extent that they will be able to check and control, balance, and even input, we shall see if there will be a voting on all the documents of the economic freedom fighters as and when the need arises, if there is no unanimity in one or more of the provisions. But we look forward to a very smooth debate on the international relations in the EFF plenary.
Okay, so let's dive into some elements of this document. Right now, we are seeing a lot of nationalist movements. We're seeing America First, we're seeing Europe First movements. And at the same time that we are seeing the success of these types of movements, even in France with Marine Le Pen's party, the EFF has taken a position that they are Pan-Africanist, and the international relations program will be Pan-Africanist. Is that something that is a viable strategy or something that is a viable standpoint, considering all of the current political winds that are blowing? And also, if we think about the announcement that was made by President Ramaphosa a few days ago about the Nigerian visa, the 5-year business visa and the tourist visa application process, not including a passport having to be physically submitted but only presented when the visa has been approved. That created a lot of uproar on the internet. We saw celebrities pushing back, DJs, commentators, a variety of people saying that, this is insensitive, and a variety of things. So when you think about Pan-Africanism in 2024, do you think that it's still something that has appeal to the grassroots of Africa?
My brother, you will agree with me that if you happen to afford to go to Europe, you can sleep over in Germany and have a breakfast in Sweden and have lunch in Denmark, and go to Netherlands for clubbing, and sleep over in Italy in one day. So when we speak of Pan-Africanism, we speak of a continent where there is mobility of people, goods, and services for the benefit of the nationals in that country, in that continent, so that they can have economic spin-offs. Imagine you have got breakfast in Cape Town, you have got lunch in Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe, and then you have dinner in the presence of the pyramids of Egypt, and end up somewhere in West Africa, in Nigeria, on the same day on a bullet train for clubbing in Nigeria, somewhere in Ikeja or wherever, where you have that most popular artist in Nigeria, and enjoy yourself there. That is what is meant by Pan-Africanism, a borderless Africa, where people interact without any limitation, where there is a flow of economic activities without any limitations amongst the nations and the peoples of the country, where there is a movement of goods and services within the continent without any restrictions and limitation. And you can travel from one village to the other on the outskirts of Africa seamlessly and without any hindrances. That will actually boost the economy of a united Africa for the people of Africa. Imagine the whole resources of Africa brought together to face the rest of the world, just like China is, just like Russia is, just like Europe is, just like America is. But here we are facing the rest of the world with tin pot dictators and village republics, and we think we can be a player in the world. We can't. We need to be a united force, a continent of Africa, united in purpose for its own people.
So I understand that argument. And for the sake of just being complete, people are saying that why don't other African nations fix their problems? Why don't these foreign nationals go back to their respective countries? And then when everything is fine, then we can come together and create this Pan-African vision. But they're saying that it's unfair for South Africa to carry the weight of Africa on its back and to carry this mandate for the Pan-African vision. So why must South Africa be a leader in this Pan-African ideal, assuming, as you stated, that, this is a government in waiting document. So if the EFF were to get the support of the public, why should South Africa prioritize this Pan-African vision when we are seeing other people saying we are going to do America first, France first, and other versions of that?
I think let us contextualize the whole issue of a borderless Africa and a Pan-Africanist united Africa. We do not mean anarchy. All people in South Africa should be properly documented, accounted for, and be in the DNA database of the Republic, and can be traced and found like any other person born and bred in South Africa. I think we must just get that one correct.
Fully documented.
Secondly, the founding manifesto of the EFF says we must start and get this issue of a united Pan-Africanist Africa in phases, not once off. So we are not calling for a spontaneous in the morning Africa that is united. We are speaking of a Pan-Africanist united Africa in phases. For instance, in the southern hemisphere, we can start by talking to our counterparts and our brothers and sisters in Lesotho and Swaziland. We can't have two village tin pot republics of some dictators, monarchs, and some very regressive political parties. Because ordinarily, 99% of the people of Swaziland and Lesotho are already in South Africa for over a century. And to deny that South Africa, Lesotho, and Swaziland are one country, I mean, you are living in another world. So we started the integration there, wherein we don't have anything called a different currency between the three countries, one army in the three countries, one parliament for the three countries, one currency for the three countries. And then we move up. We speak to our counterparts, our brothers and sisters in Botswana, Zambia, Lesotho, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe. And then we move up like that. The rest will follow as they see the spin-offs of a united Africa with a massive economy of scale in terms of the resources that they have and the bargaining power that we will have. Imagine we have got the bargaining power of the mineral resources of the TRC, the bargaining power of the mineral resources found in Mozambique and Zimbabwe and even Eswatini and the water gold of Lesotho. And we move up like that for the rest of Africa and the rest of the world. We will be a powerful continent.
Okay, I understand it. And I'm going to ask you a very, I think, tricky question, because you've spoken about these tin pot dictators, and the document identifies itself as being a progressive document, and that the EFF wants to align with progressivism around the world. Now, in the SADC region, there have been some entities which have not been progressive. For example, the Mugabe ZANU-PF government was not a very progressive government. Is the EFF going to make compromises with these type of governments in order to achieve its goals around a customs union or a monetary union? Because on the one end, when you describe them as tin pot dictators, I think you're describing the problematic suppression of civilians, the human rights abuses, those type of things. But then if you are trying to do a deal with Zimbabwe, which may right now be described as being led by a dictatorial regime, how do you reconcile your progressive values and the human rights abuses that are happening within the region and in other African countries which you will have to form relationships with?
We are very clear in our founding manifesto. We are very clear in our policy perspective. We do not take it lightly and kindly with tin pot dictators and in some balkanized African villages like that, for them really to stop a vision and a mission for which has come, and its time has come. We cannot have friendship with some brutal monarch, oppressive governments in our midst. And given an opportunity and we are in government, we'll just close up the borders and the people will rise up there and just get them out. And then we just bring down the fence and then we go for a referendum and integrate the rest of parts of Southern Africa to a greater Africa. We may start with a Southern United States of South African communities, moving up to the equator, up to the rest of Africa. But definitely will not take it kindly with the oppressive, brutal governments who are bothering South Africa, where EFF as a government in waiting will actually be a government. Imagine we have cordial relationships with Swaziland. It's not going to happen. In fact, you just have to close the border with Swaziland for 2-3 days. It's over with the king. He will be flying maybe to his friends in Thailand, Taiwan, or UK, and the people of Swaziland will be free. The same thing with Swaziland. We will engage with the progressive government of, of Lesotho. It's a very progressive, relatively, the government of Lesotho. We can engage to say, look, 99% of your citizens are in the mines and villages and townships and factories of South Africa. what does it mean for you really just to be a village republic here? Can we engage? And really, if they think otherwise, we just switch off the pump and the rest will follow.
Oh, okay. All right. I don't know whether you'll be able to switch off the pumps, but let me ask you about these solidarity movements within the international progressivism you've described. So, in the document, there is clear support for the Palestinian people, there is clear support for the people of the Western Sahara, but there are lacunas, I think, around the people of Sudan who are currently undergoing a genocide themselves, the people of Cameroon, particularly in the Anglophone areas who have been oppressed by Paul Biya, violently so. Where does the EFF stand on these type of African international issues, and how will you address them? For instance, if the EFF were governing South Africa in 2029 and there is still a genocide happening in Sudan, what will the EFF do? And how will that be different from the South African government currently?
My brother, I think let's start with the issue of some villages in Africa who wants to actually secede from the existing tin pot republics in Africa. I mean, you speak of Nigeria. Some people have just some thinkings that you need to disintegrate Nigeria and have a republic of Biafra,
Yes.
which is based on a tribalism. We have fought against tribalism. We have conquered tribalism. Our founding fathers of the Organization of African Unity have spoken so fiercely against tribalism. So we cannot, as an EFF South Africa, support the emergence of tribalistic secessionist movement in the rest of Africa, as it will happen in Cameroon and other parts of Africa. It's unfortunate, the issue of Sudan, but definitely these are just symptoms of the bigger problems that we have in Africa, of a tin pot village republics with some imaginary fences, and then you think that you are now a country, you can stand up the rest of the world. I mean, what constitutes a country is, one, do you have an economic strength? Do you have a military strength? Do you have a populous nation? Do you have the land? Then you can call yourself a country. But if you can't have one or more of this, then how do you call yourself you want to be a country? I mean, imagine there was a civil war, the 1968 to 1971 civil war of Nigeria. It's almost 50 years down the line. You want us to revisit a conflict that was resolved 50 years ago, and today we must now talk about a 2-3 state nation in Nigeria. When we want to speak about a one-state nation in Africa, we will never support some.
Of course, I understand that argument around your position being anti-secession by tribes.
Further balkanization of
Yes.
Africa.
But what about instances where the national government is now the one that is oppressing communities or acting in a manner such as what we've seen, for instance, even in Sudan under Bashir, or even before this particular war broke out, the military was already refusing to hand over power to a civilian government. And what has happened is, as a result of these two military generals fighting, that there's now a war in Sudan. But what happens in a situation like that? What position will you take? So President Ramaphosa has taken the position where he's met with General Hamdan, who is part of that Rapid Support Forces, which has been accused. And he said that in response to a question in Parliament that, it's consistent with the non-alignment and trying to make peace with and talk to all sides. But your position as the EFF is that you are rejecting sometimes this non-alignment position. How do you deal with situations such as the crisis in Sudan?
It's not sometimes we reject a non-alignment. We are aligned movement. We are not for this cheap, petty politics of non-alignment. It must be very clear where we stand in every conflict in Africa and the world. Just as we are very clear where we stand on the issue of Russia and Ukraine, where we stand on the conflict in the Middle East and Palestine in particular, so be it with the rest of the world and Africa in particular. The same applies to Sudan. What are the problems of Sudan? Who started the problems of Sudan? Who stands to benefit in the conflict in Sudan? What must happen to bring stability in the rest of Africa and Sudan in particular? We must ask this the difficult question to the Pan-African Parliament. We must ask for answers on this difficult question to the African Union. What did we stand for when we established the Organization of African Unity? How did the OAU contribute to the problems that we find in Sudan? How does the African Union contribute in the problems that we find today in Sudan? If we can answer those questions, the problem of Sudan will be over in a very short space of time. All you need to do is put sanctions against those who are perpetrators of conflict in Africa, close them up, and have a very powerful African army of response to petty conflicts of warlords who just are there for the purpose of exploiting the minerals and feeding the illegal market, the international illegal market dealing with illicit precious stones, gold, diamond, etc. Then you will have resolved the problem of instability in Africa. Close them up.
Okay, let me ask you about the alignment with, I'm assuming it would also include Russia and China and BRICS type of countries. As a young African, I've always had a tension about supporting Russia and China. I'll tell you why now. I just want maybe you can tell me your thinking on this question. Because Russia and China, while they did support, the liberation movements as they were resisting apartheid and colonialism, British rule and French rule, etc., post-independence, they seem to have also propped up very vile characters in Africa. And that bothers me, when I think about the support that Russia and China have extended to the ZANU-PF regime in Zimbabwe. I wonder whether or not they are real allies or whether or not they are also exploiting Africa for their own ends. And then when I think about China more broadly, outside of a specific example, China has been accused of using debt to get influence in Africa, where they give these African nations loans and do these infrastructure projects, some of which have been criticized as being white elephants, etc. I wonder, are we not, by shifting away from maybe even non-alignment or a relationship with Western nations, by building these relationships with these new actors in the multipolar world, creating a problem for Africa down the road? Will we be able to become, as Africa, a manufacturing hub when China wants to remain a manufacturing hub? I don't know where your thinking lies on that type of a question. But as a young African, it has crossed my mind and made me a little bit uncomfortable.
Let me help you, my brother. The propaganda against the people of China and the people's government of China, we need to deal with it. Truth must be told about the People's Republic of China and its government. It is a government that does not pay bribes to politicians in the rest of the world, including Africa. Hence, political leaders in Africa will never love and like the government and the people of China because they don't pay bribes. If you say to them, I need a loan, they ask you, what is the loan for? If you say, I want to build a university, they say, no problem. How much is the loan? you tell them it's $1 billion. They bring their own engineers to check to which extent it is $1 billion. And if it is $1 billion, they says no problem. We will construct that university or that road. They will never give any government the hard cash and say, we will see you later. We will see you later, or we'll come to cut the ribbon. They come and stay with you to make sure that, in fact, they don't even transfer it to your reserve bank. They spend the money for you. You can audit the money yourself, and you'll come and cut the ribbon. So why most African politicians and president and leaders of African governments don't like the People's Republic of China is because they don't give you the cash. They give you what you want in kind. If you say you want an overhead bridge linking Mozambique and South Africa and you want $1 billion from them, they come and construct it for you. So why they are being hated? You don't have 10% to put in your pocket. You don't have kickbacks to get from the loan. The same thing with Kenya. I mean, from Mombasa to Nairobi, they reduced a 6 to 9 hour trip to about 2 to 3 hours trip with their massive infrastructure they put there. In fact, including the road from Nairobi city to airport, which ordinarily it will take you 4 hours from Nairobi to the airport. They just built a massive one-way highway from the city to directly to the airport, and it takes now less than 20 minutes to reach the airport from Nairobi to the airport. Why the Chinese will be hated in Africa and wherever they invest is because they don't give the politicians and the government that needs the money, the infrastructure, the hard cash. That's why there will be so much propaganda unleashed against them. And they are not here to colonize any of our African countries. And this narrative that they have got a debt trap is not true. What they call a debt trap is because people do not benefit from the debt. Like in South Africa today, you get all the money from IMF and World Bank, and it becomes a generational debt. A generational debt for no value actually received, and we will be paying for a debt of $1 billion for a road that was never constructed. Actually, you can go there, it's still a push. You can't be a falter, you can't falter us when we tell you this. We have been doing campaign on the ground. I remember I went to one village like that. It has got a sign of a school that has been built there with an EMS number, something like that. But it is a push. The money has been eaten. The school has got a school number, but the school is not there. And where did they get that money? They got the money from the IMF and the World Bank in totality. That's where the South African government go and gets money. But we are burdened with a generational debt for service that was never rendered, for a road that was never constructed, for a university, a hospital, a clinic, and a school that was actually never constructed. But the money is in the pockets of politicians as they get arrested, if ever they do, every day in South Africa.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to close off by asking you some reflections, because there have been a bunch of elections that have been happening this year. This was a year of elections all around the world, but some have been very interesting. We've seen Botswana recently conclude its elections. You were, I think, there for the inauguration of the president. We've also seen Mozambique conclude its elections, and there's ongoing turmoil in Mozambique as a result of the contestations there. But as you reflect, not even this year, maybe last year as well, on the different patterns of voting in Africa, what are your reflections on the maybe changing sentiments and maybe even how that will pertain to South Africa moving forward? And because, we had an election also this year in South Africa. So what are your reflections broadly on electoral patterns across the continent?
The sleeping giant is waking up in Africa. We never thought for once that in Kenya there could be a shift of power from the dynasty families that are known to be in charge of the politics of Kenya. I mean, the Kenyatta family and the Orila Odinga family. The same that we have seen in Botswana. Whoever thought that for once Botswana could have a new government post the political party that has been ruling Kenya for the longest time within the dynasty family of the Ian Kamas. The same thing with it has happened in Zimbabwe. By the way, ZANU-PF is an illegitimate government that was never elected by the people. President Thabo Mbeki will tell you he was there, he got involved and tried to navigate and manipulate the space and formed what he called the Government of National Unity just to save ZANU-PF. Our people have come to a point that those liberators who have not become brutal oppressors must actually leave office. It has happened in Zambia twice, in Zambia 3 times. It has happened in Malawi. It has happened in Lesotho. It's going to happen in Swaziland. It has happened actually in South Africa. Today, you have got a glorious former liberation movement that is below 40%. You know, when you say they got 40%, you're just trying to sugarcoat the whole thing. They are at 39-point-something%. They are not at 40%. In fact, they are moving from 39 to 29% in 2029. They will be obliterated from the face of the political landscape. All those you call them what, the old former liberation movements that are known to have misgoverned our people in Africa. It's a good thing. The winds of change are blowing in Africa, and Africa, the giant, is waking up.
Okay, Mr. Gardee, thank you so much. But I want to, as a parting shot, ask you, how do you think that South Africa is going to receive this NPA document, and particularly this international relations position, and particularly maybe even the youth of South Africa? How do you think they're going to respond to this?
My brother, the facts speaks for themselves. When we said, this is what we stand for, and we shall not, for the convenience of votes, shift our position based on reactionary narratives that are put out there for the expediency of being in government. Well, what you see in us is what you get. This is what EFF is about. And you come along with us or you are on your own, but we cannot, just because we want your votes, we must engage in a self-hate trajectory in Africa and South Africa. We will not do it that just for the sake of votes. This is who we are. You shall know us for what we are. You will vote us into office for what you know about us. When we say we don't support the conflict unleashed against Russia by the NATO forces using Ukraine as a proxy, that is who we are. When we say we do not agree with the genocide that is being perpetrated against the people of Palestine through the Western proxy of Tel Aviv and Israel. This is who we are. You may be a fanatical Christian church worshipper in South Africa, in any of the biggest churches, and then you'll tell us that we'll lose votes from the biggest private entity churches in South Africa. Just because we want your vote in the biggest church in South Africa, therefore we must not stand with the people of Palestine. No, this is who we are. We shall tell you for what it is and what we stand for.
And Trump, do you have anything to say about him coming in?
Well, it's very funny what is happening in USA. They have always created the impression that they are the paragon of virtue in the whole world. But what we have seen, for the first time, we saw an election violence when Trump went out. And for some reason, the man is back with all his mental state of instability. And we know him for what he is. He doesn't mince his words. What you see in Trump is what you get. And we'll treat him for what he is. And we are not known for being shaken by any of the superpowers in the world. We have always spoken up against the dictatorship, imperialist and colonialist, and we will treat him as such. And that's what we see him for, what he is.
Or maybe when he's inaugurated and we can see what he's up to, we'll have another follow-up. But thank you so much and good luck for your conference.
Thank you very much, and thanks for hosting us here.
Pleasure.
Pleasure.